Well, tens of thousands of people attended a rally this weekend in Niger in support of the military coup. Well, the massive gathering served as a protest of the West Africa Regional Bloc's ultimatum to release and reinstate President Bazoum. Coup leaders have closed the country's airspace and accused foreign powers of preparing an attack. In a televised address, a coup spokesperson said the country's youth will be encouraged to fight against the outside forces. And joining us now to talk more about this is Bruen, president of the Global Situation Room and a former U.S. diplomat. Brett, great to be with you today. The situation in Niger is volatile, to say the least. The deadline set to reinstate President Bazoum has passed, and it really doesn't seem likely that will happen anytime soon. That said, what do you think happens next, and where is all this heading?
No, clearly the coup leaders in Niamey have little intention of going quietly back to their barracks. I think we are headed to some sort of confrontation. The West African Association of States, ECOWAS, has, I think, put down a pretty good, clear red line. The days of undemocratic rule in West Africa are over. And Tracy, we've seen several of these coups just in the last couple of years: Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, and now Niger. If you draw a line across West Africa, it pretty much now stretches uninterrupted from the Atlantic Ocean all the way into the middle of the continent.
Yeah, and Brett, Niger, as you know, has become a rather important partner for the U.S. in a region that could be described as a tinderbox. So how does this current situation impact that relationship, and what's at stake here for the U.S.?
Well, several things. One, I think it's really important to understand the Russia dynamic here. The Wagner group, we've all become familiar with it now, run by what was a close ally of Vladimir Putin, but still is exercising the interest of the Russian state, has been destabilizing countries across the African continent now for several years. Their hand is behind this coup, and that will push Niger closer into Putin's orbit. Niger has one of the largest deposits of uranium in Africa. That's needed for a lot of Western energy as well as other supplies. And I think it's designed to send a clear message to Western capitals that Russia will hit back, and not necessarily hit back directly at us, but some of our allies.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that big rally that was held on Sunday in support of the junta, it's reported that many of those protesters were actually carrying Russian flags. So let's talk a little bit more about, what that signals, if you can go into a little bit more detail, Brett.
Well, I think what Russia's trying to do is to create a narrative that says we are casting off the quote-unquote colonial bonds that tied Niger to France and to the broader Western world, and that Russia, as the Soviet Union did, is coming in, or I should say really portrayed themselves to do, is coming in as quote-unquote a liberation force. And that's what you have heard from coup leaders in Niger, is that we are reclaiming our independence, but in actual fact, it's making it a client state of Moscow. It's making it a client state of Vladimir Putin. So this is very bad news for stability in West Africa. It's bad news for the global economy. And as you brought up earlier, Tracy, it's bad news for terrorism and anti-terrorism efforts. Yeah,
and Brett, I want to pivot now to Russia and the war in Ukraine. A lot happening there as well, including the news that a woman was arrested over an alleged Russian plot to kill President Zelensky, and of course continued air raids and shelling as both sides ramped up their attacks over the weekend. All this as leaders from more than 40 countries gathered in Saudi Arabia to come up with a strategy to bring about a peaceful resolution to the war. Brett, I want to get your thoughts on that. I mean, what is the off-ramp here, or is there one?
I'm afraid there isn't. Russia is only going to continue to escalate, and every opportunity that they have had and will have to negotiate, to bring an end to this conflict, is only going to lead to further not only delays, but efforts by Putin to double down. And we have seen this play out again and again. I think, unfortunately, the solution to the situation in Ukraine will be worked out on the battlefield. The Ukrainians are making steady progress. And I think in a lot of ways, it's important for folks here in the United States to bear in mind that this counteroffensive doesn't necessarily come as a D-Day landing. Instead, it is likely probing Russian defenses, and ultimately will find the weakest point and will push on that point, and hopefully that will be a successful strategy for pushing Russian troops back to their own borders.
All right, we're going to leave right there. Brett, great to be with you as always. Thanks so much for weighing in.
You bet.